The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the gleaming facades of Wall Street, where the pulse of New York City beat with relentless ambition. Skyscrapers loomed like sentinels, their glass surfaces reflecting the frenetic energy of brokers, traders, and dreamers who thronged the sidewalks below. Amid the clamor of honking taxis and hurried footsteps, Chloe Wright stood poised at the edge of a crosswalk, her heart racing with determination and unease. Her camera slung around her neck felt heavier than usual, a silent reminder of the precarious assignment she had accepted. Chloe, a freelance journalist with a knack for uncovering hidden truths, was no stranger to the hustle of Manhattan. Her deep brown eyes, sharp and discerning, scanned the crowd for her target, William Harris, the enigmatic CEO of Harris Enterprises. This tech conglomerate had reshaped the industry with its innovative AI platforms. William was a titan in his field at 32, synonymous with power and mystery. Rumors swirled about his private life, whispers of a reclusive genius, a man whose cold exterior masked a heart few had glimpsed. Chloe's editor at the Manhattan Pulse, a tabloid teetering on the edge of respectability, had tasked her with capturing a scandalous snapshot of William, something to fuel the gossip columns and boost circulation. "Get me dirt on Harris, Frank." Sullivan had barked, his voice dripping with greed. "Or don't bother coming back." Chloe adjusted her vibrant crimson scarf against her tailored black blazer and jeans. Her dark curls, loosely pinned, framed her face, catching the golden light as she moved. She wasn't here for the paycheck alone. Journalism was her calling, a way to give voice to the overlooked. However, freelancing in New York was a brutal game, and Frank's ultimatum left her little choice. Spotting a sleek black Bentley idling near the New York Stock Exchange, she paused, her instincts tingling. The car screamed wealth, its tinted windows concealing whoever sat inside. It was the kind of vehicle William Harris might use. She approached cautiously, her heels clicking against the pavement. The car's polished surface offered a perfect mirror, and Chloe, ever practical, seized the moment to check her reflection. She smoothed her blazer, adjusted her scarf, and reapplied a touch of gloss to her lips, unaware that the occupant of the Bentley was watching her every move. Inside, William Harris leaned back in the leather seat, his sharp blue eyes narrowing as he observed the woman outside. Her confidence, the way she carried herself with unapologetic grace, intrigued him. But when she lingered, seemingly posing before his window, he mistook her actions for something else entirely. The window rolled down with a soft hum, and Chloe froze as a deep, measured voice cut through the city noise. William said, "I'm not interested in whatever you're offering." His tone clipped, but laced with curiosity. He was striking blonde hair swept back, a jawline chiseled enough to belong on a billboard, and a suit that spoke of bespoke craftsmanship. Yet his expression was guarded, his eyes assessing her as if she were a puzzle he hadn't solved. Chloe's cheeks flushed, not from embarrassment, but from indignation. She straightened her gaze, locking with his. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice steady, but edged with fire. "I think you've misunderstood. I'm just passing through and fixing my makeup. And frankly, for someone with such average charm, I wouldn't even consider offering anything." Her words were a calculated jab delivered with a smile that was equal parts defiance and allure. William's lips twitched, a flicker of amusement breaking through his stoic facade. Average. No one had dared call him that in years. He replied with bold words for someone loitering by my car, leaning forward slightly. "What's your game then?" Not many people stopped to primp in the middle of Wall Street. Chloe's mind raced. She couldn't admit she was tailing him without blowing her cover. But his scrutiny unnerved her, and she sensed he wasn't the type to let things slide. "My game," she said, tilting her head, "is getting through this city without being judged by men in fancy cars. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have places to be." She turned to leave, her heart pounding, but William's voice stopped her. "Wait," he called, stepping out of the Bentley with a fluid grace that belied his imposing frame. "You didn't answer my question. What's your name?" Chloe hesitated, weighing her options. Giving her real name could jeopardize her assignment, but lying might complicate things further. "Chloe," she said, finally omitting her last name. "And you are—" "William Harris," he replied, his tone carrying a hint of challenge as if daring her to react. Chloe's breath caught, but she masked her surprise with a nonchalant nod. Up close, he was even more striking, his presence commanding, yet softened by a trace of vulnerability in his eyes, a flicker she couldn't quite place. "Well, William," her voice is lighter now. "Next time, don't assume every woman checking her reflection is after your wallet. Good day." She walked away, her strides deliberate, feeling his gaze on her back. Inside, she cursed herself. She'd been so close to getting a photo, but now she'd drawn his attention in the worst way possible. William watched her disappear into the crowd, his curiosity piqued. Something about Chloe, her wit, her fire, lingered in his mind. He wasn't used to being challenged, let alone by a stranger who seemed unfazed by his status. As his driver pulled away, he made a mental note to learn more about her. Little did he know their paths were destined to cross again. Back at her cramped apartment in Brooklyn, Chloe pored over her notes, her laptop glowing in the dim light. Photos of William Harris filled her screen, him at galas, board meetings, charity events. The man was a fortress whose life was meticulously curated to avoid scandal. But Frank's deadline loomed, and Chloe needed something big. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Maya, a barista with a knack for gossip. "Heard Harris is at a tech conference in Midtown tomorrow. You're shot." Chloe grinned. Tomorrow she'd be ready. The conference at the Javits Center was a whirlwind of innovation and ego. Chloe, dressed in a sharp blazer and skirt, blended in with the journalists, her press badge, a carefully forged ticket to the event. William was the keynote speaker, commanding the stage as he unveiled Harris Enterprises' latest AI breakthrough. Chloe snapped photos from the back, her lens capturing the intensity in his eyes and how his hands moved with quiet confidence. But as the session ended, she slipped into the VIP lounge, hoping for a candid shot. She didn't expect to run into him again so soon. William stood near a bar sipping a bourbon, his tie loosened slightly. Their eyes met, and recognition sparked in his gaze. "Chloe," he said, his voice low and teasing. "Fancy seeing you here and still fixing your makeup?" She laughed, a sound that surprised even herself. "Just doing my job, Mr. Harris. I'm a journalist. Conferences like this are my bread and butter." It wasn't entirely a lie, but the half-truth tasted bitter on her tongue. "A journalist," he repeated, his eyes narrowing. "For whom?" "Freelance," she said smoothly. "I go where the story is." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And am I your story, Chloe?" Her pulse quickened, but she held his gaze. "Maybe. Depends on whether you're interested enough." Their banter was cut short when a swarm of reporters descended, cameras flashing. William's expression hardened, and he turned to leave, but not before slipping a business card into her hand. "If you want a real story," he murmured, "call me. No cameras." Chloe watched him go, the card burning in her palm. She'd come for a scandal, but now she was entangled in something far more dangerous, a game of trust and attraction with a man who saw through her facades. As she left the conference, her phone buzzed with a call from Frank. "Got anything yet?" he demanded. "Not yet," she said, her voice steady. "But I'm close." That night, Chloe couldn't sleep. William's face haunted her, not just as a target, but as a man whose sharp wit matched hers. She tossed and turned, wondering if she was chasing a story or something more. Meanwhile, across the city in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, William stared at the skyline, Chloe's name echoing in his thoughts. He'd spent years building walls around his heart, but one chance encounter had cracked them. The next day, Chloe received an unexpected email from Harris Enterprises, inviting her to an exclusive interview with William. It was a trap. She knew her cover could be blown if he dug too deep. But it was also an opportunity, one she couldn't refuse. As she prepared for the meeting, her heart raced with fear and anticipation. What was William Harris playing at? And why couldn't she shake the feeling that this story would change her life forever? The air in Manhattan carried the sharp tang of ambition, a scent Chloe Wright knew well as she navigated the labyrinthine offices of the Manhattan Pulse. The newsroom, tucked in a gritty corner of Hell's Kitchen, buzzed with the clatter of keyboards and the low hum of gossip. Chloe's desk, a cluttered island of notepads and coffee cups, was her battleground, where dreams of Pulitzer-worthy exposés clashed with the reality of tabloid deadlines. Today, her editor, Frank Sullivan, loomed over her like a storm cloud, his cigar-stained fingers jabbing at a grainy photo of William Harris. "You call this a scoop?" Frank growled, his voice a gravelly assault on the morning calm. "Harris is looking bored at a conference. I need scandal, Chloe. Something juicy enough to make Wall Street choke on their lattes." Chloe leaned back in her chair, her dark eyes meeting his without flinching. "I'm working on it, Frank. Harris isn't exactly an open book. The guy's got more security than Fort Knox." "Then break in," Frank snapped, tossing the photo onto her desk. "You're on thin ice, Wright. Get me something by Friday, or you're out." The threat hung heavy as Chloe left the office, her mind racing. She'd spent years clawing her way through the cutthroat world of freelance journalism, her bylines appearing in everything from local blogs to national magazines. But the Manhattan Pulse was her steadiest gig, and Frank's ultimatums were non-negotiable. She needed a breakthrough, and William Harris was her ticket, whether she liked it or not. Her encounter with William on Wall Street still lingered, a memory laced with irritation and intrigue. His sharp blue eyes, the way he'd challenged her with that half-smile, disarming and dangerous even. She'd expected a cold, untouchable CEO, but there was a warmth beneath his polished exterior, a spark that made her question her motives. Shaking off the thought, she headed to a coffee shop in Chelsea, where Maya, her confidant and unofficial informant, awaited with a latte and a knowing grin. "Spill," Maya said, sliding the coffee across the table. "You've got that look like you're about to chase a story or a man." Chloe laughed, the sound easing the tension in her chest. "It's the story. William Harris is complicated. I ran into him yesterday, and let's say I didn't get the shot I needed." Maya raised an eyebrow, her braids catching the light. "Complicated how?" "Don't tell me you're falling for the guy you're supposed to expose." "No way," Chloe said too quickly. "He's just a job." "But he's smart, Maya. He knows I'm after something, and he's not making it easy." Maya sipped her coffee, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "I heard he's hosting a gala at the Plaza tomorrow night. Big tech moguls, celebrities in the works. If you want dirt, that's your spot." Chloe's pulse quickened. A gala was perfect, high-stakes loose tongues, and plenty of opportunities for a slip-up. She spent the rest of the day planning, forging a press pass, and choosing a dress that balanced elegance with anonymity, a deep emerald gown that hugged her curves and shimmered under light. As she prepared, she couldn't shake the memory of William's business card, still tucked in her purse. "If you want a real story, call me." The words echoed, tempting her to blur the line between hunter and hunted. The Plaza Hotel glowed like a beacon of opulence, its chandeliers casting a golden haze over the ballroom. Chloe slipped in with the press, her camera discreetly hidden in a clutch. The room buzzed with power players, Silicon Valley tycoons, Hollywood starlets, and politicians vying for influence. William stood at the center, a vision in a tailored tuxedo, his blonde hair catching the light as he charmed a group of investors. Chloe's breath hitched. He was magnetic, his presence commanding the room without effort. But she had a job to do. She circled the edges, snapping candid shots, her lens catching William's fleeting glances at the crowd. Was he looking for someone? Her? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, but she pushed it aside, focusing on her mission. That's when Frank's plan unfolded, a scheme so reckless it could only come from his desperate mind. He'd bribed a hotel staffer to slip Chloe into a private suite where William was expected to retire after the gala. Get him alone, Frank had texted. Make it look compromising. One photo, and we're golden. Chloe's stomach churned as she followed the staffer down a gilded hallway. This wasn't journalism, it was entrapment. But with her job on the line, she steeled herself and entered the suite, a lavish space with velvet drapes and a view of Central Park. She hid her camera behind a vase, her hands trembling. Minutes later, the door opened, and William stepped in, his expression weary but alert. He froze when he saw her. Chloe. His voice was a mix of surprise and suspicion. What the hell are you doing here? She faltered, her cover crumbling. I was invited to cover the gala. I must have gotten lost. His eyes narrowed, scanning the room. Lost. In a locked suite. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. You're not here for a story, are you? Who sent you? Before she could answer, a flash went off her camera, rigged by Frank to trigger remotely. William's head snapped toward the sound, his jaw tightening. You set this up, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You think you can trap me with a cheap stunt like this? No, Chloe protested, her heart pounding. I didn't. The door burst open and reporters stormed in, cameras flashing. Frank had tipped them off, orchestrating a scandal. William's face darkened, but instead of retreating, he grabbed Chloe's hand, pulling her close. Play along, he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. He told reporters, Ladies and gentlemen, meet Chloe Wright, my fiancée. Now if you'll excuse us, we'd like some privacy. The room erupted in gasps and clicks, but William's grip was firm as he led her through the crowd and out a side door. In the quiet service corridor, he released her, his eyes blazing. You've got some explaining to do, Chloe. What's your real game? Her mind raced, torn between confessing and doubling down. I'm a journalist, she said, her voice steady, despite the chaos. I was sent to get a story. But I didn't plan this. My editor. Your editor, William cut in, is a vulture. And you're his pawn. She flinched but held his gaze. I'm no one's pawn. I took the job because I had no choice. But I'm not the person who ruins lives for a headline. He studied her, his expression unreadable. Prove it, he said finally. Work for me. Be my fiancé publicly for 1 month. Help me control this narrative, and maybe I'll trust you. Chloe's breath caught. It was a dangerous offer that could save her career or destroy it. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something beyond the CEO, a man wrestling with his secrets and vulnerabilities. Against her better judgment, she nodded. 1 month. But don't think I'm doing this for you, Harris. I'm saving my own skin. He smirked, a spark of admiration in his eyes. We'll see about that, Chloe Wright. As they parted ways, Chloe's mind spun. She'd gone from hunter to ally, entangled in a charade that blurred the lines between truth and deception. She stared at the ceiling back at her apartment, William's words echoing. Prove it. She'd taken the deal, but at what cost? Meanwhile, in his penthouse, William poured himself a drink, his thoughts consumed by Chloe's fire, her defiance. He'd meant to control the situation, but now he wondered if he was the one being drawn in. The next morning, an email from Harris Enterprises confirmed her new role, temporary executive assistant and public fiancé. But a call from Frank chilled her blood. You're in deep now, right? He sneered. Get me that scandal, or I'll leak every dirty detail about your past." As Chloe hung up, her resolve hardened. She'd play William's game, but she'd play it her way. The gala had been a trap, but the real battle was beginning. The neon glow of Times Square bathed the night in a kaleidoscope of color, its billboards flashing promises of glamour and ambition. The air thrummed with the energy of a city that never slept, and Chloe Wright felt its pulse as she stood at the edge of a crowded plaza, her emerald dress catching the light like a beacon. Tonight, she was no longer just a journalist, chasing a story. She was Chloe Wright, fiancée to William Harris, CEO of Harris Enterprises, thrust into a spotlight she hadn't chosen. The weight of that lie pressed against her chest, but she straightened her shoulders, her dark curls cascading over them, and stepped into the chaos. The event was a charity auction at the heart of Times Square, hosted by Harris Enterprises, to fund tech education for underprivileged youth. William had insisted she attend as his fiancée, a role she'd agreed to play to salvage her career and counter the tabloid scandal orchestrated by her editor Frank Sullivan. The memory of that night at the Plaza Hotel still stung, cameras flashing. William's hand steadying hers as he declared her his fiancée to a room full of vultures. Now she was here to sell the lie, but each step felt like a tightrope walk over a chasm of doubt. William stood near the stage, his tailored tuxedo accentuating his broad shoulders and lean frame. His blonde hair gleamed under the lights, and his blue eyes scanned the crowd with a quiet intensity that caught Chloe's breath. He was a man carved from contrasts, cold calculation softened by fleeting moments of warmth, a fortress of control with cracks only she seemed to glimpse. As she approached, his gaze locked onto hers, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two. "Chloe," he said, his voice low and smooth, like bourbon over ice. "You're late." "Fashionably so," she replied, her lips curving into a smile that masked her nerves, a fiancé's prerogative. His mouth twitched, a hint of amusement breaking through his stoic facade. "Careful. You're playing a dangerous game, Miss Wright." She tilted her head, her eyes sparking with defiance. "I'm just following your lead, Mr. Harris. You're the one who put a ring on it, metaphorically speaking." Before he could respond, a woman approached, sweeping through the crowd like a storm. Sophia Bennett, William's adopted sister, and a rising supermodel, glided toward them in a silver gown that shimmered like liquid moonlight. Her auburn hair framed a face that graced magazine covers, but her green eyes were sharp, assessing Chloe with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "William, Sophia," said, her voice honeyed but edged with steel. "You didn't tell me your fiancé would join us, quite surprised." Chloe felt the weight of Sophia's scrutiny, but held her ground. "Sophia, I presume I've heard so much about you." Her tone was polite, but the undercurrent was clear. She wasn't here to be intimidated. Sophia's smile was a blade thin and cutting. "I'm sure. However, I wonder what someone like you sees in my brother. Fame, fortune, or something less noble." William's hand grazed Chloe's arm. A subtle gesture steadied her. "Sophia," he said, his tone firm. "Chloe's here because I want her to be. Let's keep this civil." The auction began, a whirlwind of bids and applause, but Chloe felt the tension simmering beneath the surface. She and William played their parts flawlessly, his hand resting lightly on her waist, her laughter at his whispered comments drawing envious glances. They were a couple in love to the world, but Chloe's heart raced with the truth. Every touch and smile was a performance. Yet as William leaned close to murmur about a bidder's outlandish offer, his breath warm against her ear, she wondered if the line between pretense and reality was blurring. The night took a turn when a reporter from the New York Post cornered them, his camera flashing like a predator's eyes. "Mr. Harris, care to comment on the rumors about you and Sophia? Is Chloe just a distraction from your real relationship?" Chloe's stomach dropped. but William's expression remained impassive. "Sophia is my sister," he said, his voice cold enough to freeze the air. "Chloe is my fiancée. Any rumors otherwise are baseless. If you'll excuse us, we're here to support a cause, not feed your gossip." The reporter slunk away, but Sophia's eyes narrowed, her earlier hostility tinged with something darker. As the auction wound down, she pulled Chloe aside near a quiet corner of the venue, her voice low. "You think you can waltz into William's life? I've seen your type opportunists chasing a headline or a paycheck. I'm watching you, Chloe Wright." Chloe met her gaze unflinching. "Watch all you want, Sophia. I'm not here to play games with you. I'm here for William." The words felt truer than she'd intended, and the realization unsettled her. Sophia's lips curled. But before she could retort, William appeared, his presence a quiet command. "Everything all right?" he asked, his eyes flicking between them. "Perfect," Chloe said, her smile tight. "Just getting to know your sister." Sophia excused herself, but her parting glance promised trouble. As the night ended, William offered to drive Chloe home. The ride through Manhattan's glittering streets was initially silent, the city's lights casting fleeting shadows across his face. Finally, he spoke. "Sophia's protective. She's been through a lot. Our family isn't exactly conventional." Chloe nodded, sensing the weight behind his words. "I get it. Family's complicated. But why tell the world I'm your fiancé? You could have just denied the rumors." He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Because I needed control. The press smells blood. They don't stop. This way, we set the narrative. But I need to know. Chloe, can I trust you?" Her heart clenched. She wanted to say yes, to confess the pressure from Frank the camera she hadn't meant to trigger. But fear held her back. "You can trust me to play my part," she said softly. "Isn't that enough for now?" He didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. As they pulled up to her Brooklyn apartment, he leaned closer, his voice a whisper. "1 month, Chloe. Prove you're more than a story." She stepped out the cool night air, a shock against her skin. As his car disappeared into the city, she felt a pang of something she couldn't name, regret, longing, or perhaps the stirrings of something more profound. Inside, her phone buzzed with a text from Frank Nice, "Show tonight. Keep him close, or I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are." The threat chilled her, but it also steeled her resolve. She'd play William's fiancé, but do it on her terms. Across town, William sat in his penthouse, the city sprawling below, like a constellation of secrets. Chloe's face lingered in his mind. Her fire, her defiance, how she'd stood up to Sophia without flinching. He'd built his empire on control, but she was a variable he hadn't anticipated. As he poured a bourbon, he wondered if this charade would unravel him before it unraveled her. The next day, an invitation arrived from Harris Enterprises, a press conference at their headquarters in Midtown, where Chloe was to appear as William's fiancée. It was a chance to solidify their story, but also a test. As she prepared, her heart raced with a question she couldn't ignore. Was she falling for the man she was supposed to expose, or was this just another layer of the game? The Upper East Side shimmered with old money elegance, its brownstones and boutiques bathed in the soft glow of autumn dusk. Chloe Wright stepped out of a cab, her navy coat cinched tightly against the evening chill, her heart a tangled knot of anticipation and dread. Tonight was no ordinary event. A gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a glittering affair where New York's elite gathered to flaunt their wealth and influence. As William Harris's fiancée, Chloe was expected to shine, but the weight of her deception pressed harder each day. The press conference in Midtown earlier that week had cemented their public charade. Still, it had also drawn the scrutiny of Sophia Bennett, William's adopted sister, whose suspicions were a blade poised at Chloe's throat. The Met's grand staircase loomed before her, a cascade of marble that seemed to demand reverence. Chloe adjusted her gown, a deep sapphire number that hugged her curves and shimmered with elegance. Her dark curls were swept into an updo, a single tendril brushing her cheek, and her eyes, sharp and resolute, scanned the crowd. William had promised to meet her here, but as she ascended the steps, she felt the eyes of strangers, curious, judgmental, envious. The press had dubbed her the mystery fiancée, and every whisper felt like a test. Inside the gala was a symphony of crystal and candlelight, the air thick with the scent of orchids and ambition. Chloe spotted William near the Egyptian wing, his presence a quiet command amidst the chatter. His black tuxedo was impeccable, but his eyes, those piercing blue depths, drew her in, holding a warmth that contradicted his calm exterior. He excused himself from a group of investors and approached his stride confident, yet softened by a smile meant only for her. "You look breathtaking," he said, his voice low, carrying a sincerity that made her pulse stutter. She arched an eyebrow, deflecting the compliment with a playful smirk. "Careful, Harris. Flattery might make me think this fiancé thing is real." His smile deepened, but there was a flicker of something else, curiosity perhaps, or doubt. "It's real enough for tonight. Shall we?" He offered his arm, and she took it, her fingers brushing the fine wool of his sleeve. The contact shivered, reminding her how dangerously close she was to losing herself in this charade. They moved through the crowd, their every step photographed, their every glance dissected. Chloe played her part gracefully, laughing at William's dry humor, leaning into his touch as if it were second nature. But beneath the surface, her mind churned. Frank Sullivan's threats loomed like a shadow. "Get me the story, or I'll ruin you." And Sophia's hostility was a ticking bomb. The tension erupted during a quiet moment near the Temple of Dender, where Chloe excused herself to fetch a drink. Sophia appeared like a specter, her silver gown glinting under the dim lights. "Enjoying the spotlight, Chloe?" she asked, her voice saccharine, but laced with venom. "You're quite the actress. But William deserves better than a gold digger hiding behind a press badge." Chloe's jaw tightened, but she kept her tone even. "I'm not here for his money, Sophia. You should ask yourself why I am so threatening to you." Sophia's eyes flashed, and she accidentally bumped into Chloe swiftly, sending her glass of red wine splashing across Sophia's gown. The room hushed, heads turning, as Sophia gasped dramatically. "How clumsy of you," she said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Trying to ruin my night, are you?" Chloe's cheeks burned, but she refused to cower. "If I wanted to ruin your night, I'd have aimed higher," she said, her voice calm but cutting. The crowd murmured, and William appeared, his expression a mix of concern and exasperation. "Enough," he said, his tone brooking no argument. He took Chloe's arm, guiding her away, as Sophia stormed off, her gown a crimson-stained spectacle. In a quiet alcove, he turned to her, his eyes searching. "What happened back there?" "She provoked me," Chloe said, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "Your sister doesn't trust me, and I don't blame her. But I didn't start this." William studied her, his silence heavy with unspoken questions. He said that Sophia was protective because she'd seen me hurt before. Our family. It isn't very easy. But I need you to be honest with me, Chloe. Are you in this for the story, or for something else? Her heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice, a crack in the armor of a man who seemed untouchable. She wanted to tell him everything about Frank, the pressure, the lies, but fear held her back. "I'm here because I said I would be," she said softly. "Isn't that enough?" He didn't answer, but his hand lingered on hers, a touch that spoke louder than words. The gala continued, But the incident with Sophia had shifted something. Chloe felt the weight of eyes on her, the whispers growing louder. As they danced later that night, William's hand warm against her back, she sensed a shift in him too. A softening, a question in his gaze that mirrored her own. The next day, the tabloids exploded with headlines. Harris's fiancé, clashes with supermodel sister. Photos of the wine-stained gown were everywhere, and Frank's texts were relentless. "You're making waves. Right. Keep pushing." But Chloe's resolve was wavering. She was falling for William, his quiet strength and unexpected kindness, chipping away at her defenses. Yet Sophia's words echoed gold-digger opportunist, and Chloe knew she was digging into her past. Determined to stay one step ahead, Chloe visited a library in Brooklyn, poring over old articles about William's family. She uncovered fragments of his story, a mother, Elizabeth Harris, who left after a bitter divorce, moving to California. A childhood marked by loneliness, softened only by his work with local charities. The discovery stirred something in her, a desire to understand and help him heal. But as she left the library, her phone buzzed with an anonymous message. "I know who you are. Chloe Wright. Leave William or I'll expose you." Her blood ran cold. Was it Sophia Frank? Someone else? As she stood on the library steps, the city's hum, a distant roar, she realized the stakes were higher than ever. She needed to confront William, to lay bare her truths before someone else did. But as she hailed a cab to his office, her heart raced with a question. Could she risk everything for a man who might never trust her? Across town, William sat in his office, and there was a photo of Chloe on his desk, a candid shot from the gala, her smile radiant despite the chaos. He'd meant to keep her at arm's length, to use this charade to protect his reputation. But her fire, her resilience, was unraveling him. As his assistant buzzed with news of a new rumor linking him to Sophia, he knew the game was changing. Chloe was no longer just a pawn, she was becoming the queen in a chess match. He wasn't sure he wanted to win. The Brooklyn Public Library stood like a quiet sentinel against the autumn dusk, its limestone facade glowing softly under the streetlights. Inside, Chloe Wright sat at a worn wooden table, surrounded by stacks of old newspapers and microfiche reels, her dark curls falling loose from their pin as she pored over faded articles. The air smelled of aged paper and ambition, which grounded her even as her heart raced with the weight of her discoveries. She was no longer just playing William Harris's fiancé. She was unraveling his past piece by fragile piece to understand the man behind the myth. The gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art had left her shaken. Sophia Bennett's accusations, gold-digger opportunist, had cut deeper than Chloe cared to admit, and the anonymous text threatening to expose her secrets had ignited a fire within her. She couldn't keep lying to William when every touch and glance stirred something she hadn't anticipated. The charade was supposed to be a shield to protect her career from Frank Sullivan's threats, but it was becoming a mirror reflecting truths she wasn't ready to face. She needed to know more about William, not just for the story, but for herself. Her research had led her here to articles about Harris Enterprises and its enigmatic CEO. William Harris, at 32, was a titan of tech, but the man behind the headlines was a mystery. Buried in a 1990s Society column, she found a clue, a mention of Elizabeth Harris, William's mother, who had left New York after a scandalous divorce when William was just 8. The article hinted at a bitter custody battle, with Elizabeth relocating to San Francisco, leaving her son in the care of his father. This Wall Street financier died a decade later. William had grown up in the shadow of that loss, his childhood marked by visits to Brooklyn's orphanages, where he quietly funded programs for children, like the one he'd once been alone, adrift, searching for belonging. Chloe's fingers traced a grainy photo of a young William at a charity event, his blue eyes solemn even then. The caption read, "Young Harris heir donates to Brooklyn Youth Center." Her heart ached at the thought of him, a boy, carrying the weight of a fractured family, pouring his pain into helping others. She wondered if that was why he'd chosen her as his fake fiancée, not just to control the narrative, but because he saw something in her, a kindred spirit who fought for her place in the world. Her phone buzzed, snapping her back to the present. A message from Maya, her best friend. Found something on Elizabeth Harris. She's a painter now and lives in Marin County. Want me to dig deeper? Chloe's pulse quickened. If she could find Elizabeth, perhaps she could bridge the gap between mother and son, a gesture to prove to William and herself that her intentions were more than a tabloid scheme. She typed a quick reply. Yes, please. Discreetly. But as she hit send, doubt crept in. What if William resented her meddling? What if this was a step too far? She left the library, the cool Brooklyn air a balm against her racing thoughts. As she walked toward the subway, her mind drifted to William, the way his hand had steadied her at the gala, the quiet vulnerability in his voice when he spoke of Sophia. Their charade was a dance, each step drawing them closer, yet the threat of her secrets loomed like a storm on the horizon. She needed to see him to gauge his trust, but the anonymous text, "Leave William, or I'll expose you," echoed in her mind. Was it Sophia guarding her brother like a lioness, or Frank tightening his grip? The next morning, Chloe arrived at Harris Enterprises' Midtown headquarters, her new role as William's executive assistant, a cover for their public engagement. The glass tower gleamed, a monument to ambition, and as she stepped into the executive suite, she felt the weight of every eye on her. William was at his desk, his blonde hair catching the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He looked up, his blue eyes softening at the sight of her. "You're early," he said, a teasing note in his voice. "Trying to impress me." "Trying to keep up," she replied, her smile masking the turmoil. "You run a tight ship, Harris." He leaned back, studying her with an intensity that made her breath hitch. "You're holding up well, considering the circus we're in. The press hasn't let up since the gala." She nodded, her fingers tightening around her notebook. "They're relentless, but we're selling the story, aren't we? The perfect couple." His gaze lingered, searching. "Are we? Or is there more to this, Chloe?" The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Before she could answer, his assistant buzzed in, announcing a meeting with investors. William stood, his hand brushing hers, as he passed a fleeting touch that shivered through her. "Stay close today," he said softly. "I need you." The words lingered as she followed him to the boardroom, her heart tangled with hope and fear. The meeting was a blur of figures and projections, but Chloe's mind was elsewhere, piecing together her plan. If she could find Elizabeth, she could give William something tangible, a chance to heal the wounds of his past. But it meant risking his trust, a gamble she wasn't sure she could afford. That evening, they attended a charity dinner at the Waldorf Astoria, another stage for their charade. Chloe played her part flawlessly, her laughter mingling with William's as they charmed donors. But as they stepped onto the dance floor, his hand warm against her back, the pretense felt thinner than ever. "You're good at this," he murmured, his breath tickling her ear. "Too good." She met his gaze, her heart pounding. "I'm good at reading you." His eyes darkened, a flicker of something raw and unguarded. "And what do you see, Chloe?" She wanted to say it all, that she saw his pain, his strength, the boy who'd given his heart to orphans because no one had given it to him. But the music swelled, and the moment passed. As they left the dance floor, Sophia appeared, her presence a cold draft in the warm room. "William," a word she said, her eyes flicking to Chloe with barely concealed disdain. Chloe excused herself, but as she stepped away, she overheard Sophia's whisper. "She's digging into your past, William. I checked her search history at the library. She's not who you think." Her blood ran cold. Sophia was onto her, and the anonymous text now felt like a noose tightening. She needed to act fast, find Elizabeth, make things right before Sophia or Frank exposed her. As she slipped into a cab, her phone buzzed with a new message from Maya. Elizabeth Harris is at an art gallery in San Francisco tomorrow. Want to make a move? Chloe's heart raced. This was her chance, but it meant leaving New York, risking William's trust, and confronting her feelings. As the cab sped through the city, she made a decision. She'd fly to San Francisco, find Elizabeth, and bring her back, not for the story, but for the man stealing her heart. But as she booked her flight, a new fear gripped her. What if William saw her actions as betrayal? Across town, William stood on his balcony, the city's lights a distant hum. Chloe's face haunted him, her fire, her secrets. Sophia's warning rang in his ears, but his heart refused to believe Chloe was just a schemer. He needed answers, and he needed them soon. As he dialed his assistant to track Chloe's movements, he wondered if he was chasing a truth that would break them both. Central Park shimmered under the late September sun, its trees ablaze with hues of amber and crimson. Chloe Wright stood at the edge of Bethesda Terrace, her heart a tempest of resolve and uncertainty. She'd returned from San Francisco just hours ago, her mission to find Elizabeth Harris, a success, but the weight of her actions pressed heavily. She hadn't told William about her trip, or the fragile hope she carried, that reconnecting him with his mother might heal the wounds she'd glimpsed in his eyes. But Sophia's suspicions and the anonymous threat, "Leave William, or I'll expose you," loomed like storm clouds threatening to unravel everything. The park was alive with joggers and families, but Chloe felt alone, her navy coat contrasting with the vibrant foliage. She'd agreed to meet William here for a public appearance as his fiancé, a chance to quell the rumors swirling since the gala. The press had been relentless, speculating about her clash with Sophia and digging into her past as a freelance journalist. Frank Sullivan's demands grew more insistent, and his latest text was a blunt warning: "Get me something on Harris by tomorrow, or your career's over." But Chloe's heart was no longer in the story. It was with William, a truth she could no longer deny. She spotted him near the fountain, his blonde hair catching the sunlight, his casual blazer and slacks, a departure from his usual tailored suits. He looked younger, less guarded, and the sight stirred a warmth in her chest. As she approached, his blue eyes met hers, a mix of curiosity and caution in their depths. "You're quiet today," he said, his voice soft but probing. "Something on your mind?" She smiled, deflecting with a lightness she didn't feel and taking in the view. Central Park's a far cry from boardrooms and ballrooms. He chuckled, but his gaze lingered. "You're avoiding the question, Chloe. You've been distant." Her heart clenched. She wanted to tell him about San Francisco, the gallery where she'd found Elizabeth, a painter, with William's eyes, and a quiet regret for the years lost. But fear held her back. Fear of his anger, of Sophia's accusations, of her own secrets spilling out. Instead, she took his arm, her fingers brushing his sleeve. "Let's walk," she said. "The press is watching." They strolled along the paths, cameras clicking in the distance, their charade a delicate dance. William's hand covered hers, a gesture that felt too natural, too real. "You're good at this," he murmured, his voice low, "making the world believe we're in love." Her breath caught. And what if it's not just an act? The words slipped out before she could stop them, hanging between them like a fragile thread. William's steps slowed, his eyes searching hers. But before he could respond, a commotion erupted nearby. A man, disheveled and reeking of whiskey, stumbled toward them, his voice slurring as he waved a knife. "Sophia Bennett!" he shouted, his eyes wild. "Can you ignore me?" Chloe's instincts kicked in. She stepped in front of William, her body shielding Sophia, who had appeared moments earlier to join them. "Stay back," Chloe said, her voice steady, despite the fear clawing at her. The man lunged, and Chloe reacted, grabbing his wrist and twisting until the knife clattered to the ground. Pain shot through her arm as the blade grazed her, but she held firm until park security arrived, restraining the man. William was at her side instantly, his hands gentle as he checked her for injuries. "Chloe, are you all right?" His voice was raw, his eyes wide with something she hadn't seen before. Fear not for himself, but for her. "I'm fine," she said, wincing as he touched the shallow cut on her arm. "Just a scratch." Sophia stood frozen, her face pale. You protected me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why?" Chloe met her gaze, unflinching. "Because you're his family, and family matters." William's hand lingered on her arm, his touch a lifeline in the chaos. "He said you didn't have to do that," his voice thick with emotion. "You could have been hurt." She looked up at him, her heart laid bare. "I couldn't let anything happen to her, not when it would hurt you." The moment stretched, the world fading to just the two of them. But Sophia's voice broke the spell. "William, we need to get her to a hospital. And I need to talk to you. Alone." Chloe's stomach twisted. Sophia's tone was softer, but her eyes still held a glint of suspicion. As they headed to a nearby clinic, Chloe's mind raced. Her act of courage had shifted something. William's gaze was warmer, his touch more deliberate. But Sophia's words at the gala echoed, "She's digging into your past." If Sophia revealed Chloe's trip to San Francisco, would William see it as a betrayal? A doctor bandaged Chloe's arm at the clinic, ensuring the cut was superficial. William stayed close, his presence a quiet anchor. When Sophia stepped out to take a call, he turned to Chloe, his voice low. "You risked your life for my sister. Why?" She hesitated, her heart pounding. "Because I see you, William. The man gives to others because he knows what it is like to have nothing. I care about you." His eyes softened, but there was a shadow of doubt. "You care, but you're still hiding something. I can feel it." Before she could respond, Sophia returned, her expression unreadable. "William? I checked her phone records. She was in San Francisco yesterday. She's been looking into Mom." Chloe's blood ran cold. William's face hardened, his eyes flicking to her with a mix of hurt and anger. "Is that true?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The truth, her plan to reunite him with Elizabeth, was on the tip of her tongue, but fear choked it back. "I can explain," she said finally, her voice trembling. "You'd better," he said, his tone cold, "because I don't play games with my family." As they left the clinic, the city's lights blurred through Chloe's tears. She'd protected Sophia, but at what cost? She needed to find William's mother to make things right. But Sophia's discovery had changed everything. As she boarded a subway back to Brooklyn, her phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "You're out of time, Chloe. Tell him the truth, or I will." Her heart sank. The noose was tightening, and she was running out of moves. She needed to confront William, to lay bare her heart before it was too late. But as she stared at the city rushing by, a new fear gripped her. What if the truth drove him away for good? In his penthouse, William paced, his mind a storm of emotions. Chloe's bravery had shaken him, her words, "I care about you," echoing in his heart. But Sophia's revelation about San Francisco stung like a betrayal. He'd let her in, trusted her, But now he wondered if she was just another player in a game he'd never wanted to play. As he stared at a photo of his mother long buried in a drawer, he made a decision. He'd confront Chloe, demand the truth, and pray it didn't break them both. The Manhattan skyline glittered like a promise against the velvet night, its spires piercing the heavens, as Chloe Wright stood outside the Four Seasons Hotel, her breath visible in the crisp October air. Her sapphire coat was buttoned tightly, not against the chill, but against the storm of emotions swirling within her. She had taken a leap of faith, orchestrating a reunion between William Harris and his estranged mother Elizabeth, whom she'd tracked down in San Francisco. Tonight at William's 32nd birthday gala, Elizabeth would step back into his life, a gift Chloe hoped would mend the fractures of his past. But Sophia's revelation in Central Park exposing Chloe's secret trip had left William's trust hanging by a thread, and the anonymous threat, "Tell him the truth, or I will," loomed like a guillotine. The hotel's ballroom was a vision of opulence, its chandeliers casting a golden glow over tables draped in ivory silk. Chloe adjusted her gown, a deep burgundy, that shimmered like wine in candlelight, her dark curls cascading over one shoulder. She was no longer just the journalist playing a role. She was a woman caught in a web of her own, making her heart tethered to a man whose blue eyes held salvation and judgment. As she entered, the crowd parted their whispers, a soft hum of curiosity. She was William Harris's fiancée, the enigma who had captured the heart of New York's most elusive bachelor, or so the world believed. William stood near the center of the room, his blonde hair catching the light, his tailored tuxedo accentuating the quiet strength of his frame. His presence was magnetic, but his gaze was distant, shadowed by the betrayal he'd felt in Central Park. When he saw Chloe, his expression softened, but only slightly, his eyes searching hers for answers she wasn't ready to give. "You came," he said, his voice low, a mix of relief and caution. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wouldn't miss your birthday," she replied, her smile tentative but warm. "Even if you're mad at me." His lips twitched, a flicker of amusement breaking through. "Mad is a strong word. Confused, maybe." "You went to San Francisco, Chloe, behind my back. Care to explain?" Her heart pounded, but before she could respond, the evening's host announced the start of the gala. William offered his arm, and she took it, their touch a silent truce. As they mingled, Chloe played the part of the doting fiancée, her laughter mingling with his, her hand resting lightly on his arm. But beneath the surface, she was a tightrope walker, balancing her secrets against the growing pull of her feelings. Every glance from William felt like a question, every touch a test. The moment of truth came after the speeches, when Chloe slipped away to a private lounge where Elizabeth Harris waited. She was a striking woman, her silver hair framing a face mirrored William's sharp features, her eyes carrying the weight of years apart. "You're sure he's ready for this?" Elizabeth asked, her voice trembling with hope and fear. "He needs you," Chloe said softly, "even if he doesn't know it yet." Elizabeth nodded, her hands clutching a small wrapped gift, a painting Chloe knew of a Brooklyn sunset, a nod to the city where William had grown up without her. As they returned to the ballroom, Chloe's heart raced. She guided Elizabeth to a quiet corner, then signaled to William, who spoke with a senator. His eyes met hers, and he excused himself, his stride purposeful but wary. "Chloe, what's this about?" he asked, his voice low. She took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the storm within. "There's someone you need to see." Elizabeth stepped forward, and the world seemed to still. William's face paled, his eyes widening as recognition dawned. "Mom," he whispered the word, a fragile thread between past and present. "William," Elizabeth said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry for all the years I wasn't here." The room faded, and the gala's hum was a distant echo as mother and son faced each other. Chloe stepped back, her throat tight with emotion. William's expression was a kaleidoscope of pain, anger, and longing. But when Elizabeth offered the painting, his hands trembled as he unwrapped it. The canvas glowed with warm hues, a reminder of the city that had shaped him. And for a moment, his guard fell. "Why now?" he asked, his voice raw. After all this time, Elizabeth's eyes glistened. "I was afraid you'd hate me. But Chloe, she found me, convinced me you needed to know I've always loved you." William's gaze snapped to Chloe, a storm of emotions in his eyes. Gratitude, confusion, betrayal. "You did this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her heart exposed. "I wanted you to have this moment. You deserve it." He didn't respond, but the intensity of his gaze held her captive. The reunion was cut short when Sophia appeared, her silver gown catching the light, her expression a mix of shock and suspicion. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her eyes flicking between William and Elizabeth. "Chloe, what have you done?" "It's Mom." "Sophia," William said, his voice steady but strained. "Chloe brought her here." Sophia's face softened, but her eyes narrowed at Chloe. "You're full of surprises, aren't you? First San Francisco, now this. What's your angle?" "There's no angle," Chloe said, her voice firm. "I did this for William." The gala continued, but the air was thick with unspoken questions. William and Elizabeth spoke quietly, their conversation a tentative bridge over years of silence. Chloe watched from a distance, her heart aching with hope and fear. She'd given William a piece of his past, but at what cost? Sophia's suspicions were sharper than ever, and the anonymous threat lingered, a shadow waiting to strike. As the night ended, William found Chloe on a balcony overlooking the city, the skyline a constellation of dreams and secrets. "You went behind my back," he said, his voice low but not unkind. "Why?" She turned to him, her eyes glistening. "Because I saw you, William, the boy who gave everything to others because no one gave it to you. I couldn't let you carry that pain alone." His jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. "You're making it hard to stay angry, Chloe Wright." She smiled, a fragile hope blooming. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." But as they returned to the ballroom, her phone buzzed with a new message from the anonymous sender. "You're playing with fire. Tell him everything, or I'll burn you both." Her blood ran cold. Someone knew her secrets, her deal with Frank, her past as a journalist, with a knack for bending the truth. She needed to confess to William, to lay bare her heart, but the fear of losing him was paralyzing. In his penthouse later that night, William stared at the painting, his mother's gift a reminder of a past he'd buried. Chloe's act had shaken him, her selflessness piercing the walls he'd built around his heart. But Sophia's warnings echoed, "She's not who you think," and he couldn't shake the feeling that Chloe was hiding something bigger. As he dialed his assistant to dig deeper into her past, he wondered if he was ready for the truth, or if it would shatter the fragile bond they'd begun to forge. The Brooklyn Bridge stretched across the East River like a ribbon of steel and stone, its cables glowing under the twilight sky. Chloe Wright stood at its midpoint, her hands gripping the railing as the city's pulse thrummed beneath her. The wind carried the scent of salt and ambition, tugging at her crimson scarf and stirring the dark curls that framed her face. She'd come here to meet William Harris, not as his fiancé or assistant, but as herself, a woman teetering on the edge of truth, her heart laid bare by the weight of her secrets. The reunion at his birthday gala had changed everything, but Sophia's accusations and the anonymous threats, "Tell him everything, or I'll burn you both," had pushed her to a breaking point. The past week had been a whirlwind. William's reconciliation with his mother Elizabeth had softened the edges of his guarded heart, and deepened his scrutiny of Chloe. She'd seen it in his eyes at the gala, a flicker of trust, warring with doubt, a question he hadn't voiced, but she felt in every glance. Her courage in Central Park, protecting Sophia from a knife-wielding stranger, had earned her a fragile respect, but Sophia's discovery of her San Francisco trip had sown seeds of mistrust, and Frank Sullivan's relentless pressure. "Get me the story or you're finished," was a noose tightening around her neck. Chloe had chosen the bridge for its symbolism, a span between two worlds, much like the one she and William were navigating. She'd texted him to meet her here away from the cameras and the charade, to confess the truth that she'd started as a journalist hunting a scandal, manipulated by Frank into a scheme that had spiraled out of control. But her feelings for William were real, a wildfire she couldn't extinguish. As she waited, her heart pounded each passing minute, a reminder of the risk she was taking. William appeared, his silhouette sharp against the fading light, his blonde hair tousled by the wind. His navy coat was open, revealing a sweater that softened his usual polished demeanor. He looked less like a CEO and more like a man carrying the weight of his vulnerabilities. "Chloe," he said, his voice a low caress. "You've got a knack for choosing dramatic settings." She smiled, her nerves easing at his warmth. "We could use a break from ballrooms and boardrooms. Just us." He stepped closer, his blue eyes searching hers. "Just us," he echoed, but there was an edge to his voice, a question unspoken. "You've been avoiding me since the gala." "Why?" Her throat tightened. This was it, the moment to lay bare her truth. She took a deep breath, the city's hum fading as she spoke. "William, I haven't been honest with you. I was there to get a story when we met on Wall Street. My editor, Frank Sullivan, wanted dirt on you, something to sell papers. The night at the plaza, the cameras. It was his plan, not mine. I didn't mean it would happen, but I wanted to keep my job." His face hardened, but he didn't interrupt. She pressed on, her voice trembling but resolute. "I agreed to be your fiancé to fix the mess and protect us. But somewhere along the way it stopped being a game. I care about you, William, more than I should. Bringing your mom back. It wasn't for a story. It was for you." The silence that followed was a chasm. His eyes, a storm of emotions, hurt anger, but also something softer, something that gave her hope. "You lied to me," he said, his voice low and measured from the start. "I did," she admitted, her eyes glistening. "But everything I feel now is real. I'm not asking you to forgive me, to believe me." He turned away, his hands gripping the railing as he stared at the river below. The city's lights danced on the water, mirroring his turmoil. "I've spent my life building walls, Chloe," he said. "After my mom left, after my dad died, I learned to trust no one. But you got through. And now, you tell me it started with a lie." Her heart ached, but she stepped closer, her hand hovering near his. "It started with a lie, but it's ending with the truth. I love you, William, and I'm terrified that's not enough." He turned to her, his eyes raw with vulnerability. For a moment, she thought he'd walk away, but instead he closed the distance, his hand cupping her cheek. "You're impossible," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'm a fool for wanting to believe you." Before she could respond, he kissed her, a slow, searing kiss that tasted of forgiveness and longing. The world melted away, the bridge, and the city fading until it was just them, two souls caught in a moment of truth. When they parted, his forehead rested against hers, his breath uneven. "No more lies," he said. "Promise me." "I promise," she whispered, her heart soaring. But the moment was shattered by a shout. A group of paparazzi had spotted them, their cameras flashing like lightning. William shielded her, his arm wrapping around her as they hurried toward the Manhattan side of the bridge. "This way," he said, leading her to a waiting car. As they sped away, Chloe's phone buzzed with a new message. "You told him. Now you'll both pay." Her blood ran cold. The anonymous sender was watching, and their threats were no longer idle. "William," she said, her voice urgent, "someone's been texting me, threatening to expose my past. I don't know who, but they know everything about Frank, about us." His jaw tightened, his eyes darkening with resolve. "We'll find them," he said. "No one threatens you and gets away with it." They drove to his penthouse, the city a blur outside the windows. Inside the space was a sanctuary of sleek lines and warm wood, but the tension followed them. William poured 2 glasses of wine, his movements deliberate. "Tell me everything," he said, handing her a glass. "Your past, your secrets. If we're doing this, I need to know who you are." Chloe took a sip, the wine sharp against her tongue. She told him about her childhood in Brooklyn, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs. Her years scraping by as a freelancer, taking risks to chase stories, and the mistakes she'd made bending the truth to get ahead. "I'm not proud of it," she said, her voice soft, "but I'm trying to be better for you." He listened, his expression softening with each word. When she finished, he set his glass down and took her hands. "You're not your past, Chloe, and I'm not letting you go." Her heart swelled, but the anonymous threat lingered. As they sat together, the city's lights sprawling below, Chloe felt a fragile hope. She'd bared her soul, and William had stayed. But the shadow of the unknown sender loomed, and she knew the fight was far from over. The next morning, William's assistant delivered a dossier on Frank Sullivan, evidence of his shady deals and blackmail schemes. "He's the one behind the threats," William said, his voice cold. "But we need proof, and I think I know how to get it." Chloe's eyes widened. "What's the plan?" He smiled, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "We set a trap, but it means going public, fully public with our relationship. Are you ready for that?" Her heart raced. Going public meant no turning back, exposing her to the world's scrutiny and Frank's wrath. But she nodded as she looked at William, high with strength, a quiet promise. "I'm ready." As they planned their next move, Chloe's phone buzzed with a final message from the anonymous sender. "Meet me at the High Line tomorrow night. Come alone, or Harris pays the price." Her blood ran cold. The game was escalating, and she was walking into a trap. But with William by her side, she felt a spark of courage. Whatever came next, they'd face it together, or lose everything. In his office, William stared at a photo of Chloe from the bridge, her eyes fierce and vulnerable. He'd meant to protect his heart, but she'd claimed it piece by piece. Now, with a looming threat, he knew he'd do anything to keep her safe, even if it meant confronting the ghosts of his past. The High Line stretched above Chelsea like a ribbon of green suspended in time, its wildflowers swaying under the sodium glow of streetlights. Chloe Wright stood at its southern end, her heart a drumbeat against the quiet hum of the city. The anonymous message, "Meet me at the High Line tomorrow night. Come alone, or Harris pays the price," had burned itself into her mind, a threat that carried the weight of her past mistakes. She wore a black leather jacket over a simple dress, her dark curls loose, catching the evening breeze. Tonight, she wasn't William Harris's fiancée or a journalist chasing a story. She was a woman facing her demons, determined to protect the man she'd come to love. The events of the past week had unraveled her carefully constructed defenses. Her confession on the Brooklyn Bridge, where she'd bared her soul to William, had forged a fragile bond between them. His kiss, searing and tender, had promised forgiveness, but the shadow of the anonymous sender loomed threatening to shatter their newfound trust. William's plan to trap Frank Sullivan, her former editor at the Manhattan Pulse, hinged on going public with their relationship exposing Chloe to the world's scrutiny and Frank's wrath. But the Highline meeting was a wild card, a dangerous summons she couldn't ignore. The elevated park was quiet, its usual crowds thinned by the late hour. Chloe's heels clicked against the concrete path, her eyes scanning the shadows. She'd told William about the meeting against the sender's orders, and he'd insisted on a plan his security team would monitor from a distance, ready to intervene. But the risk was hers alone, and as she reached a secluded overlook, her breath caught. A figure emerged from the darkness, cloaked in a hoodie, their face obscured. "You're punctual," the figure said, their voice low and distorted, likely through a device. "I wasn't sure you'd come alone." Chloe's pulse raced, but she stood tall, her voice steady. "I'm here. What do you want?" The figure stepped closer, their silhouette sharp against the city's glow. "The truth. Chloe Wright. You've been playing a dangerous game, lying to William Harris, using him for your tabloid trash. I have proof, photos, emails, and your deal with Frank Sullivan. One call, and his empire crumbles." Her stomach twisted, but she held their gaze. "If you had proof, you'd have used it already." "Who are you, Frank's lackey, or someone with their own agenda?" The figure laughed, a cold sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "You're bold, but boldness won't save you. Leave, William, or I'll destroy you both." Before she could respond, a rustle in the shadows broke the tension. William's security team moved in flashlights, cutting through the darkness. The figure bolted, vanishing into the maze of the Highline's paths. Chloe's heart pounded as William appeared, his blonde hair disheveled, his blue eyes blazing with fury and concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, his hands cupping her face, searching for injuries. "I'm fine," she said, her voice trembling. "They got away." His jaw tightened. "Not for long. My team's tracking them. But you shouldn't have come alone, Chloe. You promised no more secrets." She met his gaze, her heart aching. "I had to. They threatened you. I couldn't let that happen." His expression softened, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "You're impossible," he murmured, pulling her close. The warmth of his embrace was a lifeline, but the encounter had shaken her. The sender knew too much. Her deal with Frank, her lies. As they left the Highline, William's arm around her, she felt the weight of her choices pressing down. William poured 2 glasses of scotch at his penthouse, the city sprawling below like a sea of stars. "We need to end this," he said, his voice resolute. "Frank's behind it. I'm sure of it. My team found evidence of his blackmail schemes, but we must take him down further." Chloe nodded, her mind racing. "He's desperate. The pulse is failing, and he's betting everything on a scandal. But the figure tonight, they didn't sound like Frank. There's someone else involved." William's eyes narrowed. "Sophia." Chloe hesitated. Sophia had softened since the Central Park incident, but her suspicions lingered. "Maybe. She's protective of you. But this feels bigger." They spent the night strategizing, their voices low, as the city hummed outside. William's plan was bold. A public event at Lincoln Center where they'd announce their engagement, officially drawing Frank out. Chloe would wear a wire capturing any incriminating move he made. It was risky, but it was their best shot. As dawn broke, William took her hand, his touch a quiet promise. "Whatever happens, we're doing this together." Her heart swelled, but doubt gnawed at her. She'd confessed her lies, but the anonymous sender's threat suggested they knew more, perhaps about her past, the stories she'd bent to survive as a freelancer. As they prepared for Lincoln Center, Chloe felt a spark of hope. William's trust, hard-won and fragile, was worth fighting for. The event was a symphony of elegance. Lincoln Center's fountain glowing under the evening sky. Chloe wore a gown of midnight blue, her presence radiant beside William. The press swarmed their cameras, a relentless assault. But Chloe held her head high, her hand in William's. The crowd applauded as they announced their engagement. But Chloe's eyes scanned for Frank. She spotted him near the back, his smirk, a blade in the crowd. During a quiet moment, Frank cornered her near a balcony. "Nice show, Wright," he sneered. "But you're out of your league. Hand over the story, or I'll leak everything your past lies, every dirty deal." Chloe's wire hummed, capturing every word. "You're done, Frank," she said, her voice steady. "This ends tonight." Before he could respond, William's security team moved in, detaining Frank. But as they led him away, Chloe's phone buzzed with a new message. "You think Frank was the mastermind? You're wrong. Meet me at the Hudson Yards tomorrow, or William's secrets go public." Her blood ran cold. Frank was a pawn, not the king. Someone else was pulling the strings. They were closer than she'd feared. As she rejoined William, his arm, a steady anchor, she hid the message, her heart torn. She'd fought for his trust, but this new threat could destroy them both. As they left Lincoln Center, the city's lights a distant promise, Chloe made a decision. She'd face the sender alone, protecting William at all costs, even if it meant losing him. In his penthouse, William stared at the engagement ring he'd bought, a simple diamond that felt like a vow. Chloe's courage and fire had claimed his heart, but the shadow of her secrets lingered. As he planned their next move, he wondered if he could protect her from the storm, or if it would consume them both. The Hudson Yards glowed like a futuristic dream, its glass towers piercing the Manhattan sky, as twilight draped the city in shades of violet and gold. Chloe Wright stood at the edge of the vessel, the honeycomb-like structure casting intricate shadows across her path. Her crimson dress hugged her curves, a bold contrast to the cool steel around her, and her dark curls danced in the evening breeze. The anonymous message, "Meet me at the Hudson Yards tomorrow, or William's secrets go public," had brought her here, a final stand against the unseen enemy, threatening to unravel her life with William Harris. Tonight, she would face the truth, no matter the cost. The past days had been a crucible of emotion. The trap at the High Line had exposed Frank Sullivan's blackmail, but the revelation that he was merely a pawn had shaken Chloe to her core. Her confession on the Brooklyn Bridge had forged a bond with William, his trust a fragile gift she cherished. But the new threat suggested someone closer, someone with access to William's deepest secrets. As she'd stood beside him at Lincoln Center, announcing their engagement to the world, she'd felt the weight of her love for him, a love that had grown from pretense to a fire that consumed her. But the anonymous sender's words echoed William's secrets. What did they know, and how far would they go? The vessel was quiet, its spiral staircases empty, save for the occasional tourist. Chloe's heart pounded as she climbed to a high platform, the city sprawling below like a canvas of dreams. She'd told William she needed space tonight, a lie to keep him safe. His security team was on standby, but she'd insisted on facing the sender alone, her courage fueled by a need to protect the man who'd claimed her heart. As she reached the top, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, her face half hidden by a scarf, her eyes sharp with intent. Sophia. Chloe gasped, her voice a mix of shock and dread. William's adopted sister stood before her, her auburn hair catching the light, her expression a storm of anger and pain. "You're not surprised," Sophia said, her voice low but cutting. "You knew it was me." Chloe's mind raced. Sophia's protectiveness had always been fierce, but this threatening, Her threatening William felt like a betrayal. Why, Sophia, I protected you in Central Park. I brought your mother back to him. Why do this? Sophia's eyes glistened, but her jaw was set. Because you don't belong in our world, Chloe. You're a journalist, a liar who wormed her way into William's life. I checked your past, your shady stories, your deals with Frank. I thought you were after his money, but it's worse. You're after his heart, and you'll break it. Chloe's throat tightened, but she stood her ground. I love him, Sophia. Everything I've done, every risk was for him. You can't see that because you're too busy guarding him from a world that's already hurt him. Sophia's laugh was bitter. Love, you don't know him. His secrets, his pain. Did you know about his father's debts? The scandal that nearly ruined Harris Enterprises. Williams spent years hiding it, protecting our family. You'll drag it all into the open. Chloe's heart sank. William's secrets. The anonymous threats weren't about her, but him. I'd never hurt him, she said, her voice steady. But you're doing that right now. If you expose his past, you'll destroy him. Sophia faltered, her scarf slipping to reveal a face torn by doubt. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed on the platform. William appeared. His blonde hair tousled, his blue eyes blazing with fury and fear. Sophia, what the hell are you doing? He demanded, his voice a low growl. Sophia's face crumpled. I was protecting you, William. She's not one of us. She'll ruin you. William's gaze flicked to Chloe, softening with a trust that made her heart ache. She's more than you think, he said. She's the one who brought Mom back. She's the one who risked everything for you in Central Park. If anyone's hurting me, it's you. Sophia's eyes filled with tears and she turned away, her shoulders shaking. Chloe stepped forward, her voice gentle. Sophia, I get it. You love him, but so do I. Let us figure this out. The tension hung heavy, but Sophia nodded, her voice barely audible. I'm sorry. I didn't want to lose you again, William. He pulled her into a brief embrace, his expression softening. You won't, but you need to trust me. As Sophia left, promising to make things right, William turned to Chloe, his eyes searching hers. You came here alone, he said, his voice thick with emotion. After everything, you still risked yourself for me. She smiled, her heart full. I'd do it again. You're worth it. He closed the distance, his hand cupping her face as he kissed her, a kiss that spoke of battles won and promises kept. The city's lights glowed below, a testament to their resilience. But as they descended the vessel, Chloe's phone buzzed with a final message from an unknown number. This isn't over. Watch your back. Her blood ran cold. Sophia had backed down, but someone else was still out there, a shadow waiting to strike. The next evening, William took Chloe to Central Park, where a small gazebo was lit with fairy lights, a private oasis in the city's heart. He knelt, a diamond ring glinting in his hand. Chloe, Wright, he said, his voice steady but raw. I don't care about your past or the lies we started with. I love you. Marry me for real. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, her heart soaring. Yes, she whispered, slipping the ring onto her finger. The world felt new, their love a beacon against the darkness. But as they celebrated, Chloe couldn't shake the final threat. Someone knew William's secrets, his father's debts, the scandal, and they weren't done. She'd accepted his proposal, but a new battle loomed. As they walked through the park, hand in hand, she made a silent vow she'd protect him no matter the cost, even if it meant leaving to keep him safe. Days later, Chloe received a package, an old journal. Its pages filled with notes about Harris Enterprises' early years, hinting at a hidden scandal tied to William's father. A note was tucked inside. You're his weakness. Leave, or this goes public. Her heart sank. The sender was still out there, and their end game was clear to tear her from William. As she hid the journal, her resolve hardened. She'd face this final threat, but first, she'd savor the love she'd fought for. William stared at the ring on Chloe's finger in his penthouse, symbolizing a future he'd never dared dream of. But the weight of his past, the secrets he'd buried, lingered. He knew Chloe was hiding something, a new fear in her eyes. As he planned to uncover the truth, he vowed to protect her, even if it meant confronting the ghosts of his own history. Thank you for joining Chloe and William on this romantic journey. If their story touched your heart, please like, share, and comment below to let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tales of love and courage. Your support keeps these stories alive.